Hello. So glad to be here. So last time we did read aloud, you probably remember that we were talking to the king, and he was talking about what he knows of as the borrowed line, the piece of paper that he wears around his neck. And he's saying that actually that piece of paper is just proof of his ancestor being rude, and that maybe he shouldn't have it to begin with. And so Minley's about to find out if he has the borrowed line that she's been looking for. I'm going to start with the king talking, and he says, "We have clung to it, always afraid of losing it," the king said. "But if I chose to release it, then there is no loss." Minley felt her breath freeze in her chest. She knew the king's mind was in a delicate balance. If he refused to give her the line now, she knew she would never get it. And perhaps it was never meant for us to cling to. No matter whom the paper originally belonged to, this is a page from the Book of Fortune, a book that no one owns, the king said. So perhaps it is time for the paper to return to the book. A wind skimmed the water, and Minley could see her anxious face, as pale and as white as the moon reflected in it. "You only lose what you cling to," the king repeated to himself. He glanced again at the paper and then looked at Minley. A serene expression settled on his face, and then he quietly smiled and said, "So, by choosing to give you the line, I do not lose it." And with those words, he placed the paper in Minley's trembling hands. Chapter 24. Outside the city, Dragon waited. Even after Minley had disappeared, the dragon still watched from the trees. He felt odd when she had passed the old stone lions and the door had closed behind her. He realized that he had never had a friend before, and what a nice feeling it was to have one. And perhaps that was why the second night, when the sky darkened and the moon rose, Dragon crept out from the shadows of the trees and approached the closed sleeping city. Well, he wouldn't admit it. Dragon thought just by standing by the walled city, that might make him feel just a little bit less lonely. The silver moon cast a frosted glow upon the rough stone wall and guardian stone statues. Dragon stared at them as he approached the gate. Their stocky, heavily built bodies seemed to weigh down the stone platforms they sat upon, and the darkness of the night made their stiff, curly manes look like rows of carved blossoms. One lion held a round ball underneath his forearm. The other held down a lion cub that seemed to be grinning at him. In fact, all the lions seemed to be grinning at him, as if he were a secret joke they were watching. "Am I so funny?" Dragon asked them as he passed. "Yes!" burst out the small lion cub, wriggling free of his mother's paw. "You're very funny." As Dragon jumped back in surprise, the lion cub laughed out loud, obviously highly amused at the dragon's shock. But with his laugh, both adult lions shook themselves from their platforms. "Zhao Mao!" the mother lion scolded. "Don't laugh at the lost dragon. Besides, you know the rules. No moving in the presence of others." "But it's a dragon," the cub said, "not a people. He doesn't count for the rules, does he? Besides, he's funny. Big dragon trying to tiptoe like a mouse." "Zhao Mao," the deep male voice of the other lion boomed in the air. The cub gave a half-hearted look of shame and was immediately quiet and still. By this time, Dragon had found his voice. "You're alive then," he said. "Of course we are," the male lion said, scrutinizing the dragon with interested eyes. "Everything's alive. The ground you're walking on, the bark of those trees. We were always alive, even before we were lions and were just raw stone. However, carving us did give us a bit more personality." "You're a fairly young dragon, aren't you?" the female lion said kindly. "You seem only 100 or 150 years old. Don't worry, you'll learn soon enough." 100? The lion cub said. "I'm much older than you. I'm 868. And you still have not attained wisdom, the father said. Don't tease the young one. Well, what are you doing here? The cub asked, not unkindly. Dragons don't usually come down to earth. Are you lost? Though unusual, the dragons weren't unfriendly. So Dragon settled down and told them the whole story, being born, living in the forest, meeting Minli, and now their travels to find the borrowed lion and the old man of the moon. The lions didn't interrupt once, though the cub did snicker from time to time. You belong to Magistrate Tiger? The cub said when Dragon had finished. That means you're the terrible dragon. You're the one that destroyed the king's father's palace? What a lot of trouble you caused. Dragon looked at the older lions questioningly. About 100 years ago, the female lion said, the king's father fled his home village. A dragon had destroyed his palace, and his people had cast him out, saying he was bad luck. He came here, intending to make his home with his son, and to live off his son's wealth and the power as the king of the city of bright moonlight. There were bad times here for the city, as the king's father and the officials he brought with him were corrupt and greedy. We were very concerned. You? The dragon asked. Why would it concern you? Why would it concern us? It is completely our concern, the male lion said. We are the guardians of the city. It is our responsibility to watch and keep the city turning. To see it begin to crack alarmed us to no end. And the lion held out the round ball he held in his hand and showed Dragon an old deep fracture that was slowly being filled with the dust of the earth. What did you do? Dragon asked. And there begins a story called A String of Destiny. And we're going to stop there.